Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge, episode 112. It's the worst produced show on the internet, and the nice thing about that is we can fix that in post. We had all kinds of weird camera problems going into it. Everything's usually just set up, and just sometimes it just doesn't work. It's not my fault. I feel like Han Solo every time I say it's not my fault. It's not my fault. I hit the warp drive, and it's not my fault. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to keep this one a little bit shorter tonight because I have to be on the plane tomorrow. It leaves, the aircraft leaves, wheels up at LAX at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I have to be up at probably 3:30. So I'm going to have to keep this one a little bit more brief this evening, but we still have a bunch of fun stuff to talk about and show and do. So let's just jump right into it. Why don't we? We had a couple questions about the ninja attack that I suffered when I was walking. I was actually walking, my Victoria's Secret girlfriend to her car. She was getting ready to head to the nuclear research lab. She works late at night trying to develop a, unified field theory. And coming back through the kind of dicey part of Beverly Hills, I saw a nun and several orphans crossing the road. So I decided to escort them to their bus, and progressive social justice warrior ninja jumped out and stabbed me in the back, and before I could kill him with my bare hands, he got a pretty good slice of me. So I think you all know by now that's pretty much what happened. I know some people are a little grossed out by scars and stuff. I'll just show you the latest. I just want to say this because I wasn't kidding about getting it checked out. It's important that you do. As I said, this scar on my back is only as a result of this thing having been it's just completely out of sight and just got worse and worse and worse. If you catch these things early, they just freeze them off with nitrogen. But I would like to just say, it's better to go through this than the consequences. I have to say also that I am just insufferably pleased with myself about this whole thing. And I'll tell you why. This will make sense to those of you maybe who've been in the military, and maybe some of you otherwise as well. I talk a lot about being tough, and I talk about, honor and courage and bravery and doing the right thing and stepping up and guns and self-defense and all that. And I don't know if it's true for other people like this, but, I think the one thing that a person who tries to be actually brave is most scared about is being a coward. That's really my primal fear, is that, when it comes time to actually step up, I'll just, I won't be there to perform. Hasn't happened so far. So when I went in for the surgery and the guy telling me this is going to really, really hurt, it didn't really hurt that badly. And it didn't hurt the next day. And this is the honest story. I have not taken so much as an aspirin. An aspirin. It was a little tender on the first day, and it felt like I had maybe a medium grade sunburn. For those of you a little squeamish about these kind of things, you just put a picture up I took on Monday, when we first changed the dressing, just so you can see where it is and the size of it and stuff. Those of you out there looking for naked pictures of your host, here's your big chance. But as I said, if you're a little squeamish, you might just turn away for a second, and then and I'll just get right back of it. So here's, because it didn't have much scale before. So basically, there it is. And that's after, I said it's surgery done on Friday, so that's Monday afternoon. And without exaggeration, I did not take so much as an aspirin, a Tylenol, nothing. I got the painkiller, the narcotic painkiller prescription filled because I didn't know how badly it was going to hurt. But it doesn't hurt at all, and it really just didn't hurt. So I don't know whether I have a real high tolerance for pain, but wait for the scratching I'm hearing from everybody. It's going to scratch, already starting to itch a little bit. But it was a pretty good sized chunk, and the guy was pretty good, and I just, this is a hard thing to explain too. I mentioned it a couple times before, but we live such a light life here in this country. Everything's just so easy, and we don't really get to experience much pain. I had a kidney stone that hurt like the devil. I had a history of really bad toothaches for most of my life, and I had chronic neck pain from a herniated disc. And it's possible that just being in that kind of constant low-grade pain toughened me up. But I know, like I said, it's going to sound a little odd, because people like me get so few chances to actually test ourselves. on some level, one of the main reasons I didn't want to get so much as an aspirin was because I know there are real people out there, policemen and soldiers getting shot on a daily basis and stabbed and stuff. And I wanted to have some idea what this kind of how manageable is this kind of pain. And I'm not trying to make the case for anybody else, but for me, it was really just, most of the time, I was just completely unaware it was there at all. I mean, seriously unaware of it. And when I did think about it, maybe on the second day it was a little tender. I think the only time it actually hurt was when I was trying to get into a jacket, and I could feel that I overextended the arm a little bit. But yeah, it's healing up nicely. I have to get a little more aggressive on the antibiotics. I'm a little lazy about that. But other than that, it's good. So anyway, thanks for all the concern, and especially thanks for the hilarious stories. I'm going to incorporate them into, it'll probably be a feature film someday. But yeah, it's not a lot of nerve endings back there. And like I said, that scar and that incision is the result of letting this stuff go for a long, long time. I don't want to sound like a public service announcement, but when I've done these kind of things before, I have had a couple people say, I remember talking about the heart arrhythmia I had a couple people say I went in and got checked up. So look, this little discolorations and little scaly patches and stuff, most of the time it's just little liquid nitrogen, which barely stings, and then it's over and it's gone. It's the most common form of cancer, and if you've got one that you've been thinking about or a little worried about, just do what I did and go in and get it taken care of, and I assure you it will not be as bad as this. This is the result of a lot of neglect, and I'd sure hate to see that happen to any of you out there. So much for the gory stuff. We're still waiting for the website. It's almost done. I got to look at it today. We got to get it perfect. I want it perfect, and then I want to open everything up at the same time, with a new firewall and a new time over targets, plus new especially new Nexus reports and all that stuff. So it's really coming along. It looks beautiful on all different kinds of devices. And once we get the site up and running, then we're going to start turning Stratosphere Lounge into a podcast, and we'll do all kinds of things. But because the Stratosphere Lounge is, my homies, I thought I might preview for you the membership pitch video. Oh, for God's sake, are you telling me that's going to do that? Hang on a second. I just have to check something. This may not have the problem with the camera here. Oh, that is so annoying. I just got to check something. All right. The main problem is that this camera, for some reason, is overriding the boundaries and the letterboxing on the other thing. So I'm just going to have to do this and show it to you so I don't completely distract you. What I wanted to show you real quick, just to get your take on, is this is the membership pitch. It's not going to run on the front page. A little loop of it will run on the front page quietly. There's nothing worse than loading a website and have the music come on when you don't want it to come on. That's just terrible. But this is a 2-minute and 4-second membership pitch that I'm real proud of, and I thought I would show it to you guys now. So I'll put in the little white letterboxing so that you don't see me behind it, and you can watch it, and then you can tell me what you think. Again, sorry about this. Here we go. Let's have a look. It's about right. There you go. Um, I really like it. I'm very happy with it. I think it's short and sweet and to the point and kind of evocative. I love that music. It was one of my all-time favorite tunes, and it was used on the Jane's USAF introduction, and it's a fantastic piece of work. So yeah, it's pretty much speaks for itself, and I'd love to tell you I did that entirely by myself. It's a great After Effects preset, and I just plug in the pictures and stuff. Somebody said, let me see if I can get it. Bob Neef says, I hope you're not going for the youngsters with this. Correct? No, I'm going for people with credit cards, actually, Bob. The This is not the kind of this is not actually programming, but it will the first couple minutes, first 20 seconds of it'll loop on the front page of the new website, and then you just roll over and it says click here to save the country, and then you get to watch the thing on the membership page. So it's about 2 minutes, and it's not too bad. So anyway, that's about it for the pregame chatter. Let's get down to business. Okay. Nicholas Mahaffey. Sorry, Nicholas. I love these kind of problems. Questions. Bill, do you subscribe to the A theory or the B theory of time, and why? A theory states that time is a one-directional arrow that continues out into potential infinity by continuing on one event after another. B theory states that time is more akin to a yardstick with a beginning and end fixed in place, and that there is no definitive now, merely four-dimensional slices. The A theory makes a lot of sense in terms of our regular experience with our little monkey brains. The future seems to be it's certainly unknowable, and it seems to be undetermined yet. Hasn't happened yet, so it doesn't exist. The past has happened, and as we go through time, we make decisions and events happen, and they coalesce into what we call the past, and it's the arrow of time because chemical reactions can't run backwards and things like that. And that is without question the common sense view of what we perceive as time. And it makes so much intuitive sense that we don't even think about it. You know, I'm going to go someplace tomorrow on an airplane. The idea that I've already gone someplace on that airplane and come back is not something we can really particularly think about. However, I think all the evidence and the mathematics and the physics indicate that it's actually B. And this is something that we have to understand. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, obviously. But one of the things we have to understand, I think, is that humans have an astonishing ability to puzzle things out. A really miraculous ability to see into the deepest edges of the universe and into a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang and everything. It's astonishing, but ultimately I think the best scientists are aware of this. We do have to understand that there are limitations to our cognitive ability. It's not a question of education or theory or process. It's not a question of how hard you think about it or even how bright you are. There are some things that are so far beyond our ability to comprehend. As I said on that After Bernard did with Howie with this little bird. This little bird is aware of certain things. The bird thinks I'm its mother. The bird is not aware of how this electricity works. The bird's not aware of radio signals coming through the room. And while I love my cats very much, no matter how much time I spend with them, I could never train them to fly an instrument approach. Not ever, no matter how much time I spent. They just don't have the brain power for it. And so we have the ability, I think, to understand this B theory. I don't have to explain A theory. Everybody understands it. Tomorrow hasn't happened yet, and nobody knows what it'll be because it hasn't happened yet. The idea that tomorrow has already happened, and here's the rub. The idea that tomorrow has already happened, that everything in the past and everything in the future has already happened, makes people think that it's fate, that it's fatalistic, that the bullet that's going to kill you is coming, and it doesn't matter what you do. But this is where we run into our ability to not be able to process it. We believe it's true, we just can't really get our fingers around it. So here's the thing that I've come to believe, and I've studied this quite a bit for a layman. I believe that the universe was created intact, and that everything that happened in it was built all at the same time. And furthermore, everything that happened in this device called the universe happened as a result of free will. That the free will was baked into it. And so the thing that we have to understand, if we're really going to get into these areas of physics and things that are just, I love taking questions like this to try to get it down to something, a little more easy for lay people to understand, and certainly I'm one of them. If you think about there's so many great analogies for this, but if you think about the universe as a record that was pressed, it was just pressed out. You can relate to this, right? An LP. Most of you can't, but those of you who are old enough to remember the moon landing know what an LP is, and even you young people probably know what an LP is. At least you've seen one. So when you have an LP, you've got a black disc of vinyl, and it's stamped out. Now, consider that to be the universe. And when you put the record down on the needle and you play the album, you hear songs in the right order, and you can say, oh, I know the next song is coming up, or the song that I just listened to, I can remember that. But you can put that needle down anywhere you want to on the record, and no part of the record is more real than the other. It's just where the needle is at that particular time. So if you think of the universe as this kind of a 11-dimensional record that was just baked, done, we'll get to the when and the how in a minute, then you understand that there's no part of this in terms of time that's any more real than any other part. The stuff that happened yesterday is no more real than the stuff that happened tomorrow. It's no more real than the now. It's all there. It's always been there. It will always be there. And it's just a question of where our perceptions are as we're the needle and we move across the surface of this thing. I've said this, I've mentioned this guy several times. I cannot recommend this highly enough. If you really want to open your mind to these kind of things, you have to go to YouTube and find a video called Imagining the 10th Dimension, and I think his channel is called 10th Dimension. He's got 150 of these things. It's astonishing, and I have had my mind completely opened by this guy because it's very realistic, it's very scientific, it's very provable. So a lot of quantum physics now, scientists are saying that we can't solve these equations and factor time in. Time appears to be a perceptual construct of us, given the fact that we live in we live in 4 dimensions. We live in 3 dimensions of space, and we're moving through the 4th dimension, which is time. But that is not time is not a separate dimension. It's just the direction we're moving through. For example, if I have a 2-dimensional cube and there's all little flatlanders in it, and I move this cube upwards, they're moving through the 3rd dimension. Their existence is moving through the 3rd dimension, but they're not. They're staying on a 2-dimensional plane interacting with each other. So there's a couple little things that are kind of fun when you talk about all this stuff. I mentioned the record thing. One of the things that this guy mentions, and it's a superb analogy, is we've all seen these little flip books, right? These 2-dimensional flip books where if you just flip them fast enough, and each page has a single still image on it that you can see a horse running or a little cartoon guy or whatever. And what this guy did in this video, Imagining the 10th Dimension, was he had a little flip book, and it's a flip. So imagine a flip book of a person's face. It was a drawing, but it could be a photograph. A face of the day they're born, and every single page, let's say, is another day in their lives, right? And so when you flip this thing, you will watch this person age in front of your eyes. They'll start out as a baby, a young man, an older man, middle-aged man, an old man, and then the day they die. And you can see the motion. You can see this person moving through time. But which one of these pictures is real? All of them are real. It's just you can go back and stop on one. You can go 4 to 1. You can run it backwards. You can do all kinds of things. And that seems to me to be the case, that our 3-dimensional space is just a series of slices in the 4th dimension that we're moving through at the rate of 1 second per second. And so the whole thing's built. Now, here's where we get into the stuff I think is really interesting, because many people have asked me about my belief in God, and I think I've told everybody I was raised as a Anglican at Church of England, in Bermuda. Went to church every day in Sunday school, and then I just stopped, and then I just stopped. And from the age of 16 or 17, right up until about the Howie Afterburner days, what was that, 50 years old, maybe 51, 52, somewhere in there. I was utterly convinced that God doesn't exist. We don't need him. We don't have any evidence for it, that the universe is mechanistic and completely rational, completely understandable. You take hydrogen, helium, methane, ammonia, like the atmosphere of Jupiter, you put electric spark through it, out come the amino acids, you got everything you need. And I still believe that's true. Nothing I've changed, nothing I've come to think about since then has changed that. The mechanics of it, the mechanical aspect of it is all true. But here's the thing. Because I have a scientific background. I've always had a problem with faith, and finally I found some science that I just made me think. We know early, when Heisenberg started playing around with quantum physics, we knew that if you tried to observe the position of an electron, you could determine its position but not its speed. If you tried to measure its speed, you couldn't determine its position. One locked out the other. As we've gotten more sophisticated, what we find is that by observing something, we change the result. The act of observing something changes the result. If we measure a particle, and these two particles are on separate sides of the universe, by measuring the spin or the polarity of one of them, the other one automatically changes its charge and becomes the other way. I've seen on video an experiment that simply blew my mind, and what it basically said was, light, there's a dualistic quality to light. Sometimes it's good to think of it as a series of particles, and other times think of it as a series of waves. But this is absolutely astonishing, and it's just true. I mean, I've seen the experiment. You can put light through a series of slits, and the light will behave. I can't remember one or the other. I may have it backwards, but the argument's the same. Light will behave as a particle, let's say, until you observe it. Or if you even put a camera on it, then it will start to behave the other way. The act of observing something changes it. This is not up for discussion. The cell phones and the internet and all the stuff that we're using right now wouldn't work if this were true. When you get down to the quantum level, observing something changes the reality of it. It changes it. And it's easier for us when we deal with the very, very small to realize the effect that observing has on changing individual particles. But it does work its way up. And this is the whole idea between the idea of Schrodinger's cat. It's one of these things that just doesn't make any sense intuitively, and it's probably a really pretty poor example in some way, but as an example of this quantum state, the Schrodinger's cat experiment. Oh, for the love of God. Guess who didn't hit record today? This one's just going into the ether. This one's just for you folks. It may record, actually. Ustream may record it. We'll see. Anyway, so where was it? Oh, so what the argument is that if you put a cat in a box and you have a fuse with poison, and the fuse has a 50-50, exactly 50-50 chance of burning through and killing the cat, and if the box is closed, we don't know whether the cat is dead or alive until we open the box. That's obvious. But what they're basically saying is the cat is neither dead nor alive until you open the box. Now, a cat is an observer, and a cat has all kinds of other things, so it actually doesn't make any sense on a macro level. It's a handy little cheap analogy for things. But here's the point I'm trying to make, and then I'll move on. We know for a fact that the ability to observe something changes the outcome. There's no question about that. And so what I began to realize was it's pretty arrogant of me with my monkey brain the size of a cantaloupe to assume that I've got everything completely understood and the universe is absolutely understandable. It's an 11-dimension universe, which we occupy the third dimension of. There's not only an infinite series of possibilities in a universe, there's an infinite possibilities in infinite numbers of universes. And this is where the monkey brain runs out of horsepower. When we talk about the universe having always been there, when we talk about the past, the present, future is baked into this incredibly delicate and beautiful machine, and it was always there and it's always going to be there, this is where the monkey brain runs into the wall of our ability to process things. In other words, when you say the universe has always been there, there are two things that we want to ask. Three. One of them is, what's on the other side of the universe? If the universe is expanding, what's on the other side? The second question we want to ask is, well, if the universe has always been there, what was there before this thing appeared? And the third question we want to ask is, well, if this thing was here, who made it? Or what made it? And this is where we simply don't have the horsepower to understand it. We can talk about it as a model, but we can't really get it. What's on the other side of the expanding universe? Nothing. What do you mean, like a vacuum? No. Kind of a state with no, it doesn't exist. There's got to be something on the other side. There isn't, and your inability to comprehend that is not a failure of intelligence or a failure of trying hard enough. You don't have the neurons to completely comprehend the fact that there's nothing on the other side. Well, what was here before this universe was created and what's going to be here after it's done? You can understand that it might go on forever. That's a little easier. But you can't understand that it was always there. What do you mean always? If it had to have been there, something must have happened before it was here. No. Well, how did it get there? It doesn't matter that we don't know. We just don't know. Somebody had to build it. Something had to happen. A Big Bang had to happen. What happened before the Big Bang? What happened before the Big Bang? Nothing. We can't get there. We can talk about it, and most scientists simply understand that they can't get there, and they just use it as shorthand from that point. But when you get down to the emotional aspect of it, you can't. You can't follow it. So to close this argument, what I believe is that the universe, that everything I've already done and everyone has already done, and everything in the history of the universe, from the first Big Bang to the neutron death or whatever it is, proton death at the end of the universe, it's already happened. And it has always happened, and it always will happen. Time is a little perceptive thing that I need in order to maneuver my way through this universe, but this three-dimensional aspect of the much larger universe, but it's not real in the sense of that. And strangely enough, I also believe that every action I take is in fact guided by free will. For example, I'm going to raise one of my hands right now. I was going to raise the left, but I'm going to raise the right. That decision was not predetermined. I made that decision in time, but that decision was built into the whole thing simultaneously. And now we just can't, well, wait, hold on. If it was already there, how could you just, no, all of it happened instantly at the same time. These decisions, who's going to win the Super Bowl, we don't know yet. And it's not predetermined, but it's already happened. Isn't that weird? That's what I actually believe. Turns out a couple people, thank you very much, have said they're recording this on their screen so we won't lose this little piece of wonder. It's a great idea. I love these kind of things. I think they really open your mind. Again, go to YouTube and look up Imagining the 10th Dimension, and he'll tell you why there are 11 dimensions. 10 dimensions? Yeah, there's a 0 dimension. It actually makes perfect sense, and as I've said before, watching it, I feel like a dog watching a Nova special on brain surgery. But I can get just enough of it, and I think you will too. And everything he does is just terrific. Moving on. David DiNardo, flying question, if you insist. I want to get my pilot's license. As a 19-year-old, having the money for the lessons is a far stretch. I do, however, have enough money saved to practically obtain a glider pilot certificate, which is great. I'm just not sure if I should wait 5 or 10 years and put the money I've saved towards the private pilot's license, which is 6 times that amount, or use the money to get flying in gliders. Your thoughts? Thank you for the question, David. David, my entire political philosophy is I don't think I have the right to tell anybody. Sir, I can give advice, and you're about to get some. I certainly wouldn't mandate anything. I do not believe in mandating anything to anybody. But if I was in charge of flight training for the country, I would, in the strongest terms possible, say that everybody who ever gets a pilot's license should start in gliders, without question. Without question. I cannot tell you, well, of course I can, I'm about to tell you why this is so important. And I won't spend all night with this either, because I know this is a little limited too. Look, here's the thing, David. There's 2 or 3 major aspects to this. First of all, the least important and the most cool is if you find yourself, you might want to write this down, see if you can get a training in a Grob, G-R-O-B 103. It's a 2-seat glider. It's high performance. They're very common out there. If you get a Schweitzer 233 or something, it's a little more old school, a little clunkier. It's a lot more like a Cessna. See if you can find somebody who can train you in a Grob. That's a common glider trainer or something like that. Because the least important part to me was the reason I did it, and that is you will feel like you're in a fighter jet. It's front and back seating. It's tandem seating. You will sit in the front. There will not be a propeller in front of you. You'll close a canopy. You'll have a stick in the middle. You'll have a stick the way God intended, and you'll sit back, and you'll have a 4-point harness, and you will think that this would be a very sedate and gentle and quiet kind of an event, and you'd be right about that. But if you ask this guy to ring it out on a demo flight, you will not believe the amount of energy and power and things that you can do in a glider that you would never, ever, ever try in a Cessna 172. Not ever. Ever. On my first flight, it was an aerobatic flight, and we did 3G wingovers, and then we went down on the deck and buzzed this construction crew. Well, we stayed 501 feet away from them. And pulled up in a 2.5, 3G climbing turn. I was sold. If that's the kind of flying you want, it's just plain cool. It is nothing like, it is far more exciting and energetic than flying in a Cessna or a Piper, far more. You will start your flight training in 40-degree banks, trying to find a thermal. Fantastic. Also, parenthetically, I might add that when you start your very first glider flight, you will be formation flying. You'll be flying formation behind a tow plane, and seeing another airplane in the sky that close is a hell of a thrill. I never forgot it. The first experiences I had on my first glider ride was, holy cow, look how close we are to this airplane. You can see the elevators move and the ailerons move, and it's like, wow, incredible. Now let's get to the main points here. The two main points are this. First of all, if you get started in gliders, it will make you a far better, far better single-engine pilot than you would be otherwise. Especially if you go someplace remote where most glider ports are. Because if you go someplace remote, what you're going to find is you don't have to worry about all the radio nonsense. You don't have to worry about the engine nonsense. You don't have to worry about generally the electrical system nonsense. You don't have to worry about airspace or air traffic or any of that stuff. Most glider ports are far enough out there so that you can simply worry about flying. Imagine that. Just worry about flying. We didn't have radios in our gliders. I suspect that's probably changed since then, but we just didn't. We wagged the rudder when we're ready to go on the tow plane, and off we went. And so, aside from all the distractions being gone, here's the main thing. In general aviation, this took me a long time to understand when I was a kid. There are basically four forces acting on an airplane. There's gravity, which pulls the plane down. There's lift, which pushes the plane up. There's thrust, which moves the plane forward, and drag, which tries to slow it down. And when you're teaching people to fly in powered engines, powered airplanes like a Cessna again, basically the thing that most people don't understand is that the pitch of the airplane controls the airspeed, and the throttle controls your altitude. Most people think that's exactly wrong, and it makes sense that it's not intuitive. You would think that if you pick the nose of the airplane up, if you increase the pitch, the plane would climb, but it doesn't. If you pitch the nose of an airplane up, it'll climb a little bit, but mostly it'll slow down. If, on the other hand, if you push the throttle forward, you would think you'd go faster, but if you push the throttle forward, you actually start going up higher. So this idea that the pitch of the airplane, the angle of the nose controls the speed of the airplane is the single most important thing you'll ever learn in flying. It is the whole thing. Pitch controls airspeed, period. Now, if you have an engine, you've got all these variables in there. Do I put some power in? What does that do? Will I climb? No. When you don't have an engine, pitch controls airspeed because there is no power. There's just no power. You want to go faster? Put the nose down. You want to slow down? Pull the nose up. That alone will help you enormously when it comes time to get your power rating. And secondly, glider flying is so much seat of the pants flying, it is actually genuinely a way to learn how the airplane feels. If you're going to be doing thermal soaring in the summer or ridge soaring, let's just take thermal soaring for a minute. Nowadays, these kids today, they have these electronics that show you when you're rising, and it's got like a moving map thing, and it's blue when you're climbing and red when you're descending. We didn't have that stuff. A glider is very lightly loaded, which means that there's a lot of wing for the weight, a lot of surface area for the weight. And so when you're trying to find a thermal so you can go up, gliders, by the way, for those of you who've asked this before, gliders never go up through the air. Gliders can climb, but a glider never goes up through the air, never, unless you put some energy into it and pull up, but you're losing airspeed. Generally speaking, the reason a glider will climb is because it is descending through air that is rising faster than you're descending. Either ridge lift is pushing the air up pretty quick and you're going down through the ascending air and going up, or a thermal is coming up off the ground, and even though you're descending into air that's moving up faster than you're coming down. The point about that is seat and rudder flying, stick and rudder flying, seat of your pants flying, you will feel You'll feel it. You'll be flying along, you feel a little bump. You'll look down, you'll see your variometer starting to show a little bit of increase. You turn left, and then you either got to the thermal or you went the wrong way. Now you start descending. Okay, well, it was back over there somewhere. You start turning around doing that. So I guess those 3 points. The three main points I want to make are, so it's a great way to teach you how to fly. And once you get this done, and you'll get the basics of radio, and when it comes time to transition to power, you won't have to learn how to fly. You already know how to fly. You know how to fly better than your flight instructor, frankly, if you got started in gliders. And then things like the radio and the engine are relatively trivial. The second thing is that's very important is if you're in a glider, you have a situational awareness that you have to develop, because if you don't, you're going to get in trouble, that you never have in a powered airplane. And what I mean by that is, if you're in a glider and you're not directly over the field, and that's the plan, to get out there sometimes, you will always be thinking about what is the air doing and what is the wind doing. Am I in lift? Am I in sink? Where's the wind taking me? If you want to go away from the field, you want to go upwind so that the wind blows you home. Last thing you want to do is go downwind, turn around, and realize, hey, guess what? I am not going to be able to get back there. Just not. So your situational awareness is built into the glider training experience, and because of that, you will always be aware of what you're doing in a way that a power pilot never will. These people, I mean them no disrespect, almost all the pilots go this way, but when you have an engine out there, I'm going to fly across country. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go from here down to, I'm going to go from Van Nuys to, San Luis Obispo. Great. Off you go. You're not worried about the wind. You're not worried about the lift. You've got an engine and you're following a course. But the wind and the things are all having an effect, which leads me to the third and final point, and that is this, David. I've had 3 engine failures now. Most people go their entire lifetimes without ever having a hiccup on their engine, but for one reason or another, I've had 3, and I've almost got 1,000 hours. I have 930 hours and an instrument rating. I've had 3 engine failures, and most of the people that suffer engine failures panic, and they try to continue to make the plane fly even though it doesn't have an engine anymore. They pull back on the stick or the yoke, and they slow down, and then the plane stalls, and in they go. That's generally what happens. A glider pilot, doesn't matter what airplane you're in, doesn't matter if you're in a Cessna, or if you're in anything. A glider pilot, when you have, when that gets quiet out there, you'll feel what I felt. You'll feel like, oh my God, you'll feel this moment of just, it's not panic, but it's not a happy feeling. And then suddenly you'll just say, all right, well, I'm a glider pilot. I've landed gliders 300 times. I'm in a glider now. Where can I go? When I was talking about the situational awareness, the one thing I kept missing really was you're in a glider. As you go from point A to point B, you're always looking down. Where can I land now? I can get to that road. I can get to that field. Is there anything behind me? There's an airport. I can get here. You're doing this all the time because the chances are that sometime you could just run out of lift, and where are you going to go? So if you start with a glider and then transition into powered flight, that will stay with you. Where am I going to go? Every time I fly my Long Easy, or when I flew the Sky Arrow, every single time, I got that field. Okay, I got that road. Now, next up here's here. It's just built into it. You don't think twice about it. So that's invaluable. And when things go south, and they probably won't, but when they do, or if they do, you'll be ready in a way that no one else can. You will be ready. You'll be fine. It'll be a non-event. You'll land on a field. You'll land on a road. You'll get out of your airplane with your passengers. You'll call the insurance agency, and you'll go home, and you'll have a great story to tell. You won't panic. You won't try to make a plane fly further than it can. Little things in gliders that we learn are, if you really are way away from where you need to be, if you're short of where you need to be, dive. Most people try to hang on. They slow down to minimum flight, minimum controllable airspeed, minimum sink, so they're going as slow as they can. But if you're heading into a wind or you need to get someplace, you want speed. So dive, get all the speed you can, then level off. And now instead of being level at 60 knots, you're level at 120 knots. Little things like this, they'll all be second nature. And I think finally, when we were practicing in gliders, engine failures are like I say, they just generally don't happen. They happen to me, but that's because I'm in show business and I like good stories to tell. I guess that's the explanation. But they never happen. But when you get an arrow tow, what does happen considerably more frequently than the tow plane losing power, which again never happens, is that a rope can break. I mean, these ropes are used hundreds of times a day, and they get, well, sometimes hundreds of times a day, certainly hundreds of times a week. They can get a little frayed, and sometimes the rope will break. The rope, they don't use a steel cable, because sometimes if you can't release and he can't release, you need to break the rope on purpose, and they'll teach you how to do that. But rope breaks are not unheard of. And so in glider training, we would start off behind the tow plane, and we would start to climb. And from my first lesson, and I've never forgotten it, I do the same thing every single time I've taken off. I've taken off thousands of times. Because of my glider training, and because the rope break is fairly common, my instructor in the back, who I can't see, would say, I want you to tell me what you're going to do during this entire takeoff roll. I just want you to just say it out loud. Okay, here we go. We're on the roll. If it breaks now, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop. All right, we're flying. The tow plane isn't flying yet, and we're still going to stop inside the field. We start climbing out. I can still get down inside the boundary, still inside the boundary. Okay, we're too high to make the landing inside the airport boundary, going over that fence into that field. I got the field on the left, We're climbing. Got the field ahead of it now. Climbing. Now I've got enough altitude to return to the field. Every time. And so, as I've said before, every time I take off, I expect the engine to fail at the worst possible time, and I'm pleasantly surprised when it doesn't. And, you get to go home every day. Because of that, and because I was really switched on, I was living with I had roommates who were my flight instructor and the tow pilot. So we were just three guys out there having a blast, having so much fun. The word my instructor used, a British guy who came here to get a Jeep and guns, awesome dude. He's a pilot now, is a natural citizen, a great guy named Jeff Larkin. I said to him, look, I want you to push me as hard as you can. I want to get pushed as hard as you can. So we started doing rope breaks and getting lower and lower and lower. Originally, you'd start a rope break around 700-800 feet. That's plenty of altitude. Simulated rope break. You're climbing off, and the guy's not talking about anything. You're just having a conversation. Then in the back, he pulls the release, and poof, there goes the rope. Now what are you going to do there, son? Well, you start to practice your turns back. So you start doing them at 700-800 feet, 1,000 feet, or whatever. Plenty of room. And then we started doing the rope breaks at 600. Then we did the rope breaks at 400. Then we were doing rope breaks at 200 feet, and that's about as low as you want to practice. At a 200-foot rope break, you got to do things exactly correct. And the first thing you have to do when that rope breaks, when the power's gone, when you lose power, instantly, nose down. Get this plane flying. If you keep the nose up without power, you're going to slow and stall. Nose down. It's instinctive for me. Power out, nose down, bam. All of these things, David, are things that will save your life someday, and if they don't, they'll make you, they'll give you the confidence. Even if none of these things ever happen, you'll have confidence that you'd never have. I cannot recommend it highly enough. That question was written for me specifically, almost, I think. So good luck to you, and keep me posted, okay? And by the way, don't worry about the money. You'll find a way to get the money. And even though you say the private pilot's license, you'll have a private pilot's license in a glider. You say it's 6 times more expensive for the power rating. That's probably true, but think about this. You're going to save so much time when you go for your power rating because you're already going to know how to fly. And as I said before, you'll know how to fly better than your flight instructor. He's not going to have to teach you how to fly. He's going to have to teach you how to do certain engine things and radio work and airspace and stuff. You have to know that's the airspace stuff. In order to get your glider license, you'll sail through it. You'll be much, much better. Hey, Scott O. Mazansky said, training the reptile. I'm so glad he said that. It's a great close. I've obviously told this story before, but it's the last thing for you to go with here, David. Because of this kind of training and because we really pushed ourselves hard, my flight instructor said 2 things to me that I thought were really, really good. One of them was he said, Bill, you're gonna be okay out there. I'm not worried about you. I said, why is that, Jeff? He said, because your comfort zone is here and your skill set's here. In other words, you start getting nervous and worried before you get into the kind of trouble you can't get out of. The people who get hurt have their skill sets here and their comfort zone is out here. In other words, they're already doing things that they shouldn't be doing before they start to get worried. That was cool. But the other thing he said was, and this is absolutely true, and as I said, I've had 3 times to tell you how true this is. This is exactly what happened during the engine failures. Jeff said to me when I was getting started, I soloed in 7 hours. I was a pretty switched on kid. Jeff said to me, he said, Bill, when things go south up there, the fear and the panic are going to take over, and the reptile's going to take over. that reptile part of your brain is going to take over. If it's a really serious problem, you're going to lose your ability to have rational thought, and the reptile is going to take over. And my job is to teach the reptile what to do. Do I have something on my lip here? I should just... What is that? Shadow? Who knows? I hope it's something delicious. I've never seen it before. Anyway, there you go. So enough of that. But thanks for the great question. Man. I'm going to skip a couple here. As I say, I have to make the show fairly short. I don't really want to, but I didn't want to skip it. I do have to get up really early. So, and these two questions are stuff I've kind of covered before. Let's go to Kevin Jordan, who says, when listening to 1960s music and studying the social and political movements of the time, my wife always opines that she was born in the wrong era. Is there an era that would find Bill Whittle more at home? Flying Spitfires during the Battle of Britain is too narrow to count. I thought I would have, if I'd been born a little earlier, I would love to have been an astronaut, but those guys were already picked, and my vision wasn't good enough. I'm beginning to think now, strangely enough, that I'm actually born a little bit too early. I had a real... when they shut down the space shuttle program, I said, that's it. I don't think NASA... I personally don't think NASA's going to go back to space again. I don't think NASA's going to fly people in space again under things built by NASA. But lately, with the SpaceX vertical landing, and then Blue Origins did the same thing, the private space initiative is actually starting to gain enough steam, and I just wish I had a little more time. Free Frontier is not finished. As I said, I've got these things in order. I do want to say something about common sense resistance after this, just very briefly. Let me write that down because I forget things. But all of a sudden, I'm starting to see things that I wish I was seeing in the 80s or the 70s. Some of these comets, some of these images of the comets and series and things are terrific. These are easily attainable. If all we could get over our terrifying, irrational fear of nuclear things, if we had an atomic rocket out there, we'd be able to go tomorrow. And that's hopefully what I want to do with Aurora a couple years from now, talk about actually going. But I had basically for many years kind of just almost given up. And I can't say this without prefacing by saying it's one of the signal honors of my life, maybe the greatest honor of my life, to be quite good friends with Burt Rutan. I spend every 4th of July up there with the guy. And, and I was just sitting with him one night, and he was saying, Spaceship One was 2004, that's 12 years ago. He thought that within 2 or 3 years, by 2007, 8, or 9 at the latest, that there would be dozens of these things flying, Spaceship Twos, dozens. The companies were competing with each other. He said, we gave Virgin America the contract, but to build them, and the technology and the designs and all that other stuff, and Scaled became a contractor for them. But he said, we made it part of the deal that crystal clear that you're not the only customer. If somebody else wants to come along and take a Spaceship Two too, then we're going to keep that option open for the good of the space flight thing. So I just want to say lately, it's been looking really promising and really exciting. I was very moved by that SpaceX recovery and all those young kids out there, those punk kids who I diss so much. There's some really great ones there, and I'm never going to get used to mission controllers in T-shirts, with Yoda on them. But that's my problem. It's not their problem. And so I'm starting to think that, we may be able to put it together. I have to tell you, watching SpaceX do it and watching Blue Horizons do it, it makes me think, do people in Europe or China get this? Europe especially, right? They're always telling, the EU's got a bigger GDP than America, and blah, 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 they're smarter, blah, 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 blah. Does an average European look at this and say, these Americans, these are guys with their own money, not only not getting the help of the government, with the government basically standing in the way. These are guys taking their own money, and they're flying into space, and they're landing, or doing things that they've never done. The Europeans have never put a man into orbit on their own vehicle. The Europeans. They've ridden on the shuttle, they've ridden on Soyuz, they've had astronauts, they've got a module up there, but they've never built a. Never. I mean, after World War II, Britain had such incredible technological skill, and Germany, they've never built a rocket in a capsule and put somebody up in space. But frickin' Elon Musk is on his own dime, and a bunch of kids down in Hawthorne Airport are sitting there and they're doing it. They've got this Dragon capsule. The Dragon capsule's flown without humans. They've been to the space station with unmanned capsules. Just a matter of time. It is, Victoria, USA, USA. Exactly. It's amazing. No one else can do this. And I wish I was a little younger to be a part of it. Now, I'm not planning on going anywhere soon, but man alive, you can't get up there and keep doing it by throwing away all the good stuff. You just can't. I'm still a big fan of winged vehicles. I love them. But let 1,000 flowers bloom, I mean, sometimes a big dumb rocket's the way to get up there and or get stuff up there. Now what I'd like to see, what I'd like to see more than anything right now is I would like to see the private space sector get a reusable manned orbiter. I think while it was a worthy experiment and certainly worth the try, I think the experience of the space shuttle shows that a vehicle that takes people and lots of cargo is probably not the best bet. You can make compromises with a booster or a cargo launch that you can't make with manned vehicles. And by putting people inside the big dumb rocket, you're making everything too expensive. I think we ought to have a badass kind of a quick, orbital vehicle. I frankly think we ought to get a suborbital booster, a flying booster that gets up to 70, 80,000 feet, 60,000 anyway, 50,000, I don't care. And, maybe Mach 1 or Mach 1.5, and then you pitch off a hypersonic orbiter that's using air on a supersonic ramjet, on a scramjet to get it going as fast, as high as it can, close those front vents off, pop in some oxidizer, and just get 10 people, 6 people up into orbit, and then come back down, glide, refuel it, load it on the back of this thing, and send it up again that afternoon. I want to live to see that. And, if enough of you become members, we can build one ourselves. That's the whole idea of Free Frontier. Let me just say one thing about CSR, and then, I'm sorry, and connected to that, Chris Taylor was saying, what's the odds of really discovering another planet in our solar system? What should we name it? If so, should it begin with a P to make the old demonics work again? And somebody else had a question about that. Do we think there's a chance of discovering another planet in our solar system? I think we have discovered it. I think the announcement that was made a few days ago, was it JPL? That these gravitational anomalies in smaller objects cannot be explained unless there's a super Earth-sized planet out there, bigger than Earth, smaller than Neptune, in a very far and elliptical orbit. I think that is very compelling. And I think we're going to find it. That'd be great. Then we'd have 10 planets, because if it's bigger than Earth, it's a planet. If it's bigger than Mercury, it's a planet. Just had a thought that I never had before. Is Mercury technically a planetoid? Why not? Hard to say. In any event, there's a lot of cool stuff out there, and we can get to it. The thing that's most amazing about the Pluto probe is not the great images they took of Pluto, but it took 7-8 years to get the Voyagers to Jupiter, and it got to Pluto in 10 years. That thing was hauling ass, because it wasn't going to stop at the other end. And Delta V is everything. We've got the technology. We just don't have the will. So yes, to answer your question, I think I might have been born too early and in a lot of ways too late. The hard part of my life is watching a country that is obviously in a state of decline and trying to turn it around. I think we can turn it around. You will never hear me say the best days of this country are behind me. I will never say that out loud. I will, to my dying breath, believe the best days are in front of us. Always believe that. Have to believe that. But yeah, it's hard. It would have been, every time I see things like The Revenant or World War II movies, or even in the 60s with the space program, which I can remember, I remember it was great to be part of a society where things were getting better every day, we were going faster and higher, and there was nothing we couldn't do, and things seemed to be running really well, and they were well organized, and the government knew what it was doing, and the government truly was your friend. They weren't trying to tell you what to do, and nothing was politicized. And You didn't have to go to a geometry class and hear about who the teacher wanted to vote for. And it was, you know, you could ride a bike without a helmet and all this other stuff that make me sound 1,000 years old. It's hard to watch all of this weakness and decay. But if I didn't think we could stop it, I'd be out someplace partying down and enjoying, enjoying the collapse. And I don't believe that for a second. I think we're going to stop it. I do believe it, and I think you believe it too. So let me just say one thing about CSR, and this is kind of inside baseball for Stratosphere Lounge people, and it's an important thing, and I don't want to be misunderstood about it. I'm not going to go wide with it, but I did have some concerns about it. On the new website, I've got a great banner. I'm going to take a gigantic risk here and take more of your precious time. And it's not a gigantic risk. I just want to bring it in here to show you because it's. I did a version of it, but I think they've got the actual final version here. I didn't think about this until then, but I'll show you real quick. It won't take a second here. Okay, we'll just drag it in and show you. This has got to do with the common sense resistance. It's black and white. Where is that thing? Well, I won't waste your time. I'll just show you what we got here. This graphic right here. You just import this baby. And bring it into the show. This is something that's going to appear on the website. Get this video hooked up, and this is undoubtedly going to cause that letterboxing problem as well too. Here we go. Oh, hey, what do you know? All right, so look, on the website, in the middle of the banner is a graphic like this, but similar to this, but behind me, here we go. Behind me and in front of the background people are the big letters that say join. It says join the common sense resistance. And here, this is the kind of inside baseball thing I just wanted to say to you people out there who've been following the whole program the whole time. I'm going to use this as essentially just as a marketing ploy. I'm going to say join the common sense resistance as part of trying to get people to be members. And this is the part I wanted to say to the hardcore Stratosphere Lounge people. Because it's really important. The common sense resistance, as we talked about, is a real world network of people, and that's something completely different. It's just that, frankly, the name is so good, and the idea is so good, and the appeal of it is so strong, that I'm using it as a marketing tool to get members. Being perfectly honest with you about this. And if you're a fan of the common sense resistance, I wanted to get this out of the way. I don't want you to think I've sold out on the idea of the whole network thing and the wrenches and the code names and all of that. So when you see join the common sense resistance on the website, it's an evocative thing, and needless to say, the more people we have, the more members we have, the greater that works out. But it's not the common sense resistance in the way we talked about it before, and it's not replacing that. And if you're not a member, doesn't mean you're not a member of the common sense resistance. I don't want to suggest that at all. Just wanted to get, I just wanted to get that said, and I'll probably have to say that a few more times. When I say a marketing tool, I'm not just talking about to get people to become members. I think this idea of, I'll just run that graphic one more time. I just love it. I think the idea that America is ready for people who know what they're doing, who've got some competence and some skill, and they've got some ability, and they're not necessarily Republicans or Democrats. They just want things done right. They just want things to work. I think that's a very powerful thing, not just for me, but just in general. I think people want to belong to something that makes sense, that works. And so even though it's on a page with a big join back there in order to get people to join as a member, what I'm really trying to do is get people comfortable with the idea of this group that we all represent, and it's a non-hierarchical, just nodes. No one's in charge of it. I think that idea is important. So I think I just wanted to get that said when you see the new website, which we're very, very close to. I know I've said it very, very close to it for a while, but it's actually, we're in like the last hour stage kind of thing. So there we go. And then you know what, I think I'm going to have to call it there. Honestly, it's about 7:15. I'm sorry about the shortness of the questions. I didn't want to miss 2 weeks in a row. I'd like to get back to every week, except when, if something happens. But yeah, Eyes and Fire pointed out there's a stripper silhouette on the right. I just threw that in there because, hey, you never know when you need to recruit some. I kind of think, to be honest with you, Eyes and Fire, I'm pretty sure I actually pushed her out. I think I airbrushed her out of a later version. She's saucy, however. She's the only one not wearing business clothes. You can find her. I love this graphic so much. I just love it. I love the guys with their arms crossed. I love the guy with the hands in his pockets down at an angle to the left there. I don't know. I just think it's wicked cool. And yeah, so we're going to be using that. And again, I don't want you to confuse that with the common sense resistance and the wrench and stuff. I know they're the same terms. I hope you understand what I'm trying to do here and why I'm trying to do it. And I don't want you to think that I've forgotten about it. We do have an order and a sequence. It's been pushed back, but everything in my life gets pushed back. Nothing happens as fast as I want it to. Just to recap, as a close for tonight, the plan is 1 solid year of political messaging with everything, full guns blowing, afterburners, firewalls, the whole 9 yards, until the inauguration, which is less than a year from now, at which point I will join the reserves, and I will not stop doing political videos, but at that point, we will be in the movie business. And one of the things I need to do this year is start to get the financing and all the pre-production done so that the inauguration is on whatever date, the 20th or whatever, and then we start shooting on the 21st for Big Bat Problems. Big Bat Problems, I think, is hilarious, brilliant, if I say so myself, very clever, very interesting and funny and scary and cool. And we have to do that movie first because it's a low-budget movie. It was written to be a low-budget movie. It's not going to look like a low-budget movie. But after that movie comes out, then we can up the budget and do Common Sense Resistance, which is set 40 years in the future. That's an action movie. It looks a bit like Terminator. And then with that in the bag and a real-world Common Sense Resistance network in place, then we can go ahead and do Aurora and use Aurora to introduce the Free Frontier and see if we can get a private space program going. I haven't put any of this stuff away. I've just had to get it prioritized. I try to do everything at once and nothing gets done, so that'll all be there. But the website will have we'll do more updates on Big Bat Problems, Aurora, and Common Sense Resistance. They're all there on the website. And we've got new shows called The Nexus Report. We'll be doing more Time Over Targets and stuff. We're just about done. And it looks fantastic. Ian Branson has done just a terrific job, and I asked a lot from him, and I just couldn't be happier with the look. And we could have gotten it out earlier, but I want to get it out right, so there we go. Tim Morris just showed up. He says, "Are you really late?" Tim, sorry. I had to make it a short one tonight, so I'm afraid you're actually late. It's just about an hour and 11 minutes tonight, and I do have to go. I have to be up at 3:30, get on a plane. It's a private event. However, everybody always asks me to remind them where I'm going. By the time this gets to YouTube, it might be too late, but I am actually going to be on down in Ramona on Saturday at the main stage in Ramona. If you're anywhere near there, that is my favorite event of the year. It's a terrific venue. It's a terrific crowd. If you're anywhere in the neighborhood, I'll see you at Ramona, and we'll be more... once we get the website up, we'll be a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Responsible about updating all of these things. Anyway, that's about it. So thanks again for everything, and I'm going to hit the kill switch before going to the closing graphic, because the closing graphic has me underneath it. It's all just weird. It's not my fault. But again, thank all of you very much for being here. Thanks for your membership. I know not everybody can afford to be a membership. I've said this many, many, many times. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. If for any other reason you can't do it, I want anybody feeling bad about that. It's just what we do here to keep the lights on, and boy, do I understand what it's like to be counting the pennies. So there you go. And yes, we will keep doing Stratosphere Lounges Eclipse 2017. And these Stratosphere Lounges will maybe start featuring more of, hey, here's what happened on the set this week, or here's some behind-the-scenes footage, or here's the latest special effects stuff. That'll be fun, too. I've been waiting for that my whole life, and And I'll just close with this. I know it seems odd, but if you think I'm good at what I do now, you wait to see what I do when I get to do what I really, really, really want to do. Najalma just asked for my business address. It should be on billwhittle.com on the website down at the bottom there. I'm pretty sure we have to have that information there for you. If not, just Facebook message me and I'll let you know. Anyway, thanks everybody. As I said, I'm gonna have to just cut this one cold and then we'll go to our shot. But thanks very much for joining us for episode 112, and we will see you next week for 113. Okay, take care now. Bye-bye.